Hey, Kentucky, this is Mary Jo Perino. Tonight, Governor Beshear unveils his proposed budget. Bills affecting Kentucky's transgender community are up for debate. And I go one-on-one with Attorney General Daniel Cameron. All that and more is next on Hey, Kentucky. Welcome to Hey, Kentucky. Former State Auditor Adam Edelin is my co-host tonight. And as you mentioned on Twitter, the honeymoon may be over.
The honeymoon, not for us.
No.
But the honeymoon in Frankfurt is over.
Yes, it is. So let's get right to it because we have a lot to talk about with this proposed budget. No spending cuts, but a couple of new taxes. That's the message Governor Beshear delivered to the legislature last night. In laying out his $23 billion budget, the governor highlighted his top priorities once again: education, health care, and pensions.
So an investment in education is an investment into forever changing our future. This investment must start with our teachers.
That investment comes in the form of a $2,000 salary increase for teachers across the state and other perks. Beshear's plan also fully funds Medicaid and Medicaid expansion, fully funds the pension system, and gives state employees a 1% raise each year. The proposal is the first in 14 years to avoid spending cuts. Now, to pay for it, the administration wants to dip into 4 buckets, one of which is new revenue. This is assuming they'll be able to get sports betting passed, as well as a proposed cigarette tax and vaping tax. Much of that was news to Republican leaders.
Not a single legislator in the body, majority or minority, was briefed on this budget prior to it hitting the floor just a little while ago. So I find that to be just a little disconcerting.
As leaders from both sides made clear, this is just a proposal. The Republican-controlled legislature will have the final say. Adam, there's a lot of things that sound great, but you can't cash checks that your mouth can't cash checks.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm trying to say.
So what I would say is that I love the values of this budget. I like that it protects education. I hope we're living in a world where we don't need to make additional cuts. But I think there's a lot of skepticism out there about the numbers on which the governor built this budget, which in the history of Kentucky is not unique. But it is the governor's job to present a budget. They tend to do that in a thematic way. Here is what we're going to do in the next couple of years. And it's up to the legislature to pull out the pencils and the calculators and really get it going. I thought the mistake that the governor made that he didn't need to make was the failure to brief Republican leadership going in. You know, when you have doubled down on civility and bringing a different kind of attitude to Frankfurt, which I think you and I have discussed, he's done really well for the first couple months of his administration. I think it's unfortunate that he didn't bring them in and at least give them an update about what he was going to propose in his speech.
Because that also gives Republican leaders ammunition to say, hey, he didn't even share any of this with us beforehand.
And eventually there's going to be enough fighting, and there's going to be plenty of shooting back and forth on both sides, but giving your opponent the opportunity to take a shot at you that I think most Kentuckians will say probably should have updated the legislative leadership before the media.
Yes.
I think that was a mistake.
Yeah. All right. Well, 3 bills are up for debate this legislative session that involve Kentucky's transgender community. One would require student athletes to play sports based on the sex listed on their birth certificate. Senate Bill 114, named Save Women's Sports Act, sidesteps questions about how students may identify their gender. Another bill resurrects attempts to prohibit students from using public restrooms that don't align with their biological sex. And a third proposal would make it a felony for doctors to prescribe gender-altering medications to minors. A transgender candidate from Louisville says she is running for office to defend her community from this kind of legislation. And Adam, I feel like there's a deeper-seated reason that we have so many bills that address the transgender community.
Because I think for a lot of people it's good politics. And what I would say is that these are the kinds of issues that don't need to be in the political space. Can we agree that we've got school board members and physicians and people in the medical community who ought to be making these decisions and not politicians in Frankfurt? And I think the thing that most deeply frustrates me is that so much of this legislative session out of the gate seems to be about focusing on issues that don't really impact larger communities, right? I mean, they're about trying to identify problems that don't meaningfully exist. And can we not agree that, you know, transgender folks are people, and they let's not push them around. Let's let people live their lives. I think that's something that everybody ought to be able to agree on. But where there are decisions that need to be made that relate to education or health care, let those decisions be made by individuals and the
Educators
communities and
and
educators
doctors.
and real stakeholders rather than politicians.
Yeah, I agree. All right, also in Frankfurt, one senator has filed a bill to exclude corporate middlemen who handle prescription drug claims from Kentucky's Medicaid plan. Senate Bill 50 calls for the plan to pay pharmacies directly for prescription drugs, eliminating managed care companies that currently handle most of that business. Campbellsville Republican Max Wise says the bill is designed to protect small-town pharmacies amid accusations that bigger companies are squeezing them out and making profits from higher rates charged to Medicaid. Managed care leaders say low-income patients could stand to lose millions of dollars in prescription drug discounts if the state started paying directly. Adam, there's got to be a middle ground here, because I think there's lots of reasons that small-town pharmacies may be being pushed out. You've got the convenience of Rite Aid, Walgreens, all those things.
That's right.
So it's not just the middleman, and you hate to see anybody lose prescription drug coverage.
That's right. And so I did a huge audit of this when I was state auditor about the middlemen, the managed care folks that we've got in our healthcare system. And what they do well is that they keep down duplication, and they prevent some out of control cost on one end. But in some areas, and this is one of them, they're almost unnecessary in their middleman capacity. And what we've got to make sure that we're doing is preserving that rural healthcare network, and whether it be pharmacies, whether it be hospitals. You know, Mary Jo, it's hard to build an economy in a community where there's not a hospital nearby or not a healthy, strong, vibrant health network. And it's a precondition of economic growth and quality of life. And the state needs to be making sure that our Medicaid program is working for the benefit of providers and patients and taxpayers, and not just for big corporations who found a way to get into the middle of all this.
And I often wonder if maybe one Medicaid system versus 5 or 6 that we have in the state now might be a better solution.
There's no doubt, because it has gotten so complicated. There's so much corporate duplication, and it's not working for the people who need the care.
No. All right. In Washington, the impeachment trial continues as the proceedings entered the questioning phase today. Yesterday, Kentucky's Mitch McConnell privately told his fellow GOP senators that he does not yet have the votes to block new witnesses. The Senate Majority Leader held the closed-door meeting shortly after Donald Trump's legal team made its closing arguments in the trial. Louisville Courier-Journal reports that several members of that defense team recently gave money to McConnell's re-election campaign. Meanwhile, in the U.S. House, Kentucky's lone congressional Democrat, John Yarmuth, continued his criticism of the Trump White House.
A deeper look clearly reveals how methodically the president and his administration have been circumventing our laws to advance their authoritarian view of executive power. To understand their scheme, we must understand the law they tried to secretly dodge and ultimately broke, the Impeachment Control Act.
And this is eerily similar to what we were talking about with Governor Beshear not letting Republicans know ahead of time, right? Mitch McConnell did not know about this book that John Bolton wrote ahead of time, even though the White House did. That irritated him.
I know Mitch McConnell well enough over the years to know that that didn't settle well.
Yeah.
And he is a man who's not going to be taken. Listen, you can like him or not, but everybody knows that he is one tough customer. And I think that was a mistake of the Trump White House to not make sure, to fail to make sure that he knows everything that they know. But Mary Jo, never in my life did I ever think I would say the following words. Let's hear what John Bolton has to say. I think we ought to have witnesses. And whether people can come together and agree on the outcome is seriously in doubt. But why would we not want folks who have information that is material to this process not have the opportunity to share what they know?
And I'm totally fine if some of those witnesses are Hunter Biden.
Should be.
Or Burisma.
Right.
Or any of that. Like,
absolutely.
Let's
let people
hear.
call who they need to, but if we're going to have the process, it needs to be fair, and we need to hear from people who may have information.
I do think Republicans are leaning that way into saying, okay, maybe we do need to do this now. All right, up next on Hey Kentucky, part 1 of my sit-down interview with our new Attorney General. Daniel Cameron talks about the agenda for his first term, from the opioid crisis to abortion. Stay with us.